This is the Carmudgeon Show.
Welcome.
It is part of the Haggerty Podcast Network, and it is hosted by Jason Cammisa and Derek Tam-Scott. This episode has a topic, ostensibly.
Rambling, yeah, a little bit.
What do we talk about? We talk about how car dealers suck.
Yeah.
We talk about
ADMs
how
blow.
ADMs also suck.
The car market is still out of touch for young enthusiasts.
Yes.
Except when it's not.
Out of reach in some respects. Yeah, a little bit of sort of follow-up and further discussion on the topic from the week before last, which was about whether it's a bad time to be a young car enthusiast.
Whether it's a bad time to be an automotive journalist is what I would like to title this episode, because you can't say a word about a Cybertruck, for example, or anything without it becoming politicized and everyone getting angry at you.
I'm sorry for your trauma.
I will survive this. However, if you like our content, and I promise this episode will be far less somber than that intro, consider joining the Haggerty Drivers Club, which includes unlimited flatbed towing for all of your classic cars, a subscription to our award-winning magazine. Oh, I put that on the table so you could flash it in front of the camera. Can you please grab that? And amazing things like discounts on your, favorite car stuff, and unlimited access to our valuation tools. There's a link below. We are part of the Haggerty Podcast Network, and
I've also clapped. Now we just have to listen to the jingle.
Was the jingle better for younger people? Nobody watches this for how we look, Derek. And we're recording.
Well, in that case, I'll just put a bag over my head, but not a plastic one.
Damn it. So close.
Nice try. It'll be a very short episode. Punctuated by my departure in a body bag.
Rustling of plastic. And we're back.
And we're back.
Yeah, we're back. We got yelled at. We got hollered at.
Yes, I mean, we chose a controversial subject, which elicited some interest.
Cybertruck?
I mean, that also did that.
Can I just say one thing before we get on topic? I mean, I
you
never do
often
this.
do.
Yeah, often? I resent
Always.
that. But thank you. Much better. The world is so politically charged right now that all I had to do is CNBC called me and said, "We think the Cybertruck has a snow problem. Would you come on our live newscast thing and talk about the Cybertruck's snow problem?" And I'm like, okay, sure. What problem? And they're like, well, videos are all over the internet about Cybertrucks getting stuck in the snow. And I'm like, okay, I'll go look for them. There's one. And there's the other one that was the original, like it was a muddy, snowy situation. It
was very off-road, right? They were trying to get a Christmas tree or something.
Yeah, exactly. So this one is a Cybertruck trying to go up a driveway in Tahoe. And it's a steep driveway. It's nothing insane. And it's just sitting there spinning all four wheels and whatever. And of course, not only is it being videoed, the guy whose video got published all over the internet, went quote unquote viral, is not the only one in the car videoing. The driver of the car that is also videoing. So it's, you see the two cameras. And so I get on the thing and they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, okay. Everyone's noticing this right now because all eyes are on the Cybertruck. And all eyes are on Cybertruck because it's so divisive. For the record, and let me state this very, very, very clearly, I'm not in love with the fucking Cybertruck. I made a video extolling its engineering virtues. I don't want one. I don't love it. I don't have one. I'm never going to have one. But everyone is now like, either put me in the "you have been paid by Tesla" camp. A PR exec clearly accused me of being paid for the Tesla video the other day. And I almost threw the laptop across the room all I said was, really? You think if I was paid, I'd be in this shithole? I was in my office. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? I'm not getting paid. And I really resent that. But you're either in the Cammisa got paid to be nice to this camp, or Cammisa is now destroying the planet with these EVs. And everyone's got their opinions, but it's like crazy town shit. I am not doing anything else with Cybertruck. I'm not going to mention this truck anywhere in like Instagram. No more reviews of it because people are too upset with me one way or another. If it's good, if it's bad, I get in trouble either way. But anyway, so I'm like, look, first of all eyes are on Cybertruck because of how it looks and because of how politically charged it is, apparently. And I said, if everyone posted social media videos every time an F-150 got stuck in the snow, TikTok servers would blow up. I mean, like, No one cares if a Range Rover gets stuck in the snow. No one cares if a Land Cruiser gets stuck in the snow. One Cybertruck gets stuck on a driveway and everyone loses their shit. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the second thing I said was a bit of consumer advice. Understanding physics. If you're looking at a vehicle and the vehicle is spinning its four wheels, guess what? Car's not the problem. Tires are the problem. You're looking at me like,
yes, no, I'm listening.
Thank you. I'm like, oh, I hope you don't disagree. Right. Unless there's some horrible suspension design problem, or some terrible weight distribution.
The importance of all four going simultaneously, which means it is operating as designed, which is trying to put power down to the ground.
So this
surfaces.
Truck is sitting there spinning all four tires. Okay. Oh, people are bitching the diff. So the Cybertruck has a front diff lock and two rear motors, right? The ones that have come out. Well, the diff lock isn't activated yet. So, if Elon hadn't this and the diff lock was activated, the car's spinning all fucking four tires. Like, there's nothing else the car could have done.
Right, locking the diff. The whole point of that is to get the two wheels or whatever, four wheels in some cases, if it's a Glendeva or if it has to center differential, to locking differential to all spin at the same speed rather than for one of them to spin that has no traction and no torque to go to the single wheel or remaining wheels that do have traction.
Because an open differential will always send all the torque to will favor the wheel with the least traction.
Which is why you lock your differentials when you get stuck.
Right, but all cars that have modern traction control will add brake to one wheel to stop it from spinning, thus performing the same way as an open diff. It's a less elegant as a locked diff. It's a less elegant solution. It's not what you want, but it'll get you up the hill. But here's this stupid fucking Cybertruck scrambling up the hill, and everyone's like, "Oh, there's a problem with it." Okay. The problem with it is the tires. Now, this is an off-the-shelf tire that is available, but there's a special Tesla version of it. And it has, oh God, I didn't do my homework on this one, 8 millimeters of tread depth. And I always do in 30 seconds of an inch because I'm a stupid American. So whatever it is, I think the regular one has 14 and this is 14, 30 seconds. This is 8 millimeters. So there's a slight reduction in tread depth that Tesla engineered in. Well, look, this is a vehicle that weighs a lot and it has to be able to put enough power to ground to hit the 0 to 60 targets, which it didn't 2.6 when I tested it. And it has to be able to stop and turn from the velocities it can achieve. It needs to be able to do 130 miles an hour because that's what they chose as the thing's top speed. And it's got to do snow and mud and whatever else. And be efficient because ultimately range is the most important thing. So there's a balance of attributes that Tesla chose for the tire and for how the thing performs. And that's what it is. There's not a problem. But what other vehicle can do 2.6 to 60 and then climb at 30% grade in icy, snowy conditions on its stock tires? Just go buy a set of KO2s and shut the fuck up. Leave me out of this. I don't want to be part of the Cybertruck debate anymore.
You participated though.
Well, I did in that one, not realizing that all I did was be like, hey, it's spinning all four tires. It's just, I thought I was going to go on TV and just be like, hey, it's spinning four tires. Therefore, it's the tire issue. And the tires got to do a lot of different stuff. Maybe Tesla should have an option for more aggressive tires. Maybe they should have an option for summer tires, for example, if maybe you want to do faster than 2.6 to 60. No. Did I realize that everyone who's watching CNBC, I haven't watched TV in 20 years, thinks like, oh, this side or that side or everyone. Oh, God, I'm so sick of this shit. So anyway, I got myself in trouble with that.
Welcome to America.
And we got ourselves in trouble with saying it's a good time to be a shitty enthusiast or a bad time to be a good enthusiast.
Mm-hmm. Please continue.
No, so previous episode we talked about, I titled it.
Two episodes
ago. I titled it, it's a bad time. I think it's a bad time to be an enthusiast, right? And we had a really interesting debate. What I thought was interesting. The audience seems to have thought so too, even if they disagreed with both of us, one or both of us. And at the end of the day, the comment that I think I wrote the most in DMs and Instagram comments and on Reddit was, look, at no point was I saying it is black or white. The world is better or the world is worse. Things are different. I pointed out a bunch of examples of things where the economics haven't changed as much as we think they have. Things are more difficult, but there are a lot of things that haven't changed that much. And my point here, to quote Billy Joel, is the good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. That's my point. It's not like, oh, it was It's so easy for me and it's miserable for you, or it was so much harder for me. That everyone loves to say, I work harder, I do this, I have more headwind. That's not the case. Things do change, and I don't know what the answer is.
Okay. Well, that last part is important.
We don't know what the answer is, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, we were having two conversations simultaneously. One of them is about, has almost nothing to do with cars, which is just about the economic climate and the experiences of young people. And that's where we get out of our domains of expertise, which can be potentially problematic. The other one is actually a conversation about cars and the availability of cars that appeal to enthusiasts. And I think we sort of conflated those, or we bounced back and forth between those two topics repeatedly without putting enough delineating space in between them. It's a lot easier for us to talk credibly about automobiles. What I was also surprised to learn, because, I got just inundated with DMs, and it's maybe representative of who listens to the Carmudgeon show, but there were just so many young people who are like, I'm 23, I'm 25, I'm 26, and I lust only for cars of this era, which are the same age as me or older. Like, I heard so much of that, and much more of that than anything else. And so that was an interesting point for me to hear, because that implies that people are interested in cars that are getting older, or that there's a particular era that's interesting. And, as you're discussing, like that, you felt pretty unambiguous that there was not a lot of stuff after about 2012, or a lot less stuff since 2012 that's really appealing to enthusiasts. And so regardless of whether that ends in 2012 or 2002 or whatever it is, some year which is, a fixed moment in time as opposed to a rolling moment in time, that's where you get multiple generations of people all converging on the same cars at the same time, which creates, market dynamics that are problematic. And so, if your generation, Generation X and millennials and Generation Z are all lusting after the same Radwood era cars, for example, which, anecdotally, I don't know if factually is true, but there's enough, young people who are interested in that era of car for them to be a factor in the market. And it's a market that they're trying to participate in by their own, however many dozens of people approached me. Then that means you get three generations simultaneously trying to buy the same supply, dwindling supply of cars, which is creating price dynamics that make these things feel like they're slipping out of reach. And I started writing notes because I was like, man, I have to synthesize all of these things because there's literally dozens of people who are all saying this. So let me see.
It's so fun. I wonder if we lined up all of the DMs that I got versus the DMs that you got. And I think people reached out to either one of us
who they felt resonated.
Right. Because that is certainly not what the feedback that I got directly. It was the opposite. It was that Derek keeps going back to.
Did people specify their ages?
Yeah. Well, not always, but
everyone who wrote me specified their age, and they were all like under 30.
Well, because I accused you of being weird, and they're like, I'm weird too. And the thing is, so you have 25 people who are also weird. It was
probably more like 100.
Okay, but that's still an echo chamber, right?
Yes, of course.
We said
and
that,
I
right?
acknowledge that.
This is the problem with social media, is that we are able to connect to so many people, and we're trying to talk about larger trends, and larger trends are not people looking for cars as old as they are. I don't think.
Yeah, but it's enough to be a factor.
It's a factor.
And it's a voice that exists. A lot of these messages also began with thank you, like all caps. Like this perspective is something that I feel seen and underrepresented
because
in this space.
They are a 20-something-year-old into Radwood era cars is what it is.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So what were you starting to say? I felt like you were about to start saying something.
Who the fuck knows? I'm waiting for you.
Okay. So I'm going to just go through some of my sort of notes as I try to synthesize all of this. The thing that I think we both can agree on is that the menu of options as an automotive enthusiast are more expensive and less compelling and less numerous as we get into the last decade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
It was also interesting. At some point, I read a comment about Derek focusing more on collector cars, like air-cooled 911s.
Oh, you kept going back to air-cooled 911s.
But that person I think I want to bring that up again for a reason, because that was not a collectible car when they were $11,000. And so everyone has this idea that those are collector cars. Back then, they were just shitty used cars, the way that all these other cars that we talk about, like, you know, I don't know, cheap BMWs or Miatas are. And the whole point of my argument is that those weren't collector cars back then. They were just like an enthusiast car that you would buy if you had $12,000.
You're right, but that's the problem. With time they became a collector car. So to go back to them and say I'm longing for the old days, that doesn't work. You can't. I'm
longing for the days where they didn't have to be considered collector cars, where you could just have it be an option along with all the other sort of entry-level enthusiast cars that you might buy for 10 or 12 grand.
But honestly, I think most of the cars from that era, from the eras that you were talking about with air-cooled cars, have gotten more expensive. And that's that moving window we talk about all the time.
Not only is it moving, but there's more people trying to join that same window.
Well,
if you have 3 generations vying for that same window.
Do you really think it's that different than it was previously? Having 3 generations vying for this stuff. I don't know.
I think what's happening is that people are all getting funneled into the same sort of bolus of cars, which you would say is probably like mid 80s, maybe slightly earlier, to like 2010-ish, where you can buy a car that you could drive every day that is like fuel injected and has potentially ABS, and you could put modern tires on, and is like old enough to be inexperienced but new enough to not be like a carbureted, unsynchronized sort of chaos, rusty death trap.
Right.
And so there's this sort of like magical era currently that appeals to people. Another comment that I got that I don't really think about, I think because I haven't owned a lot of modern cars, is that someone's like, I like, you know, E36s or E34s because, you know, something like a headlight is a 5 3/4 inch thing you buy at O'Reilly for $11.99 instead of like a $1,300 assembly that has xenon in it that you can only get from the dealer. And I was like, oh, I don't really think about that because I don't own modern cars. But like the cost of operating and like the number of computer modules and all that stuff, I mean, was another factor that a lot of people cited. That was not something I thought about. Someone else also said, think about Ferraris. You used to be able, if you were at some point, you're like, okay, I can buy a $25,000 or $30,000 Ferrari 308, and that's like the first Ferrari that most people who are, you know, building wealth, if they're going to start from a position that's not of privilege, then you start with the cheapest Ferrari you can, which used to be a $25,000 308. What is the equivalent now?
What's the cheapest Ferrari you could buy?
I mean, is it an F1 360 or 355, or is it a Mondial?
348. Mondial. You can buy a cheap Mondial.
Yeah, so for like 45-ish. So someone was like, I used to sort of dream of having Ferrari accessibility. That's now just not a realistic possibility for me anymore.
Yeah, but a Mondial is no more expensive.
Yeah, it used to be the 308 GT4, I suppose.
Yeah, same price, same car.
The other thing that I'm just summarizing comments was that the interest in JDM cars seems to be that you can get something interesting for cheap. You know, it's not going to be sporting, but it's going to be interesting. And if your goal is to have something interesting, and you deprioritize, you know, a sporting experience, and then you buy sort of these peculiar...
Buy a Toyota Serra.
Yeah, or, I mean, less sporting even than like Nissan Cedrics and Presidents and K-trucks and stuff like that, then you can make a statement and get something interesting. And so people, you know, to me, it emphasizes the resilience of the human spirit, which is where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to have a cool automotive experience, then people will give up, you know, athleticism in favor of interestingness or something like that, which is another choice that a lot of people recounted was a choice they were making. Another point, which actually causes the collision of the two separate conversations that I was just talking about, was having a space to work on your own car. If real estate is such a like non-starter for people, and you can't have a garage to work on your own car because, you know, you want to live somewhere where your job is and it's very expensive, and you live somewhere where you have street parking, and you make compromises like that in order to live somewhere where you can, commute reasonably. Then they were like, I would love to have I just can't even have a place to put or work on my shitty old car. And I was like, oh, interesting. So that causes the commingling of those two issues.
So some of the feedback that I heard on the opposite side of this, which was really interesting, is in some ways it's so much better to be. And by the way, let's be really clear about this from my perspective. Anyway, you can disagree all you want. There is no right answer to this, right? This is an exploration and a discussion. I don't know if it's any better or worse. I just know it's different, right? But some of the people that brought up stuff is it's so much easier to be a used car owner now And for these reasons. Number one, we, instead of just an auto trader or a little pamphlet that you had 20 years ago, we now have a worldwide web of interconnected sites.
Wait, but this is all predicated on having the ability to buy something. If you don't have the ability to even buy a car,
ingredients. We're not talking about the overall.
This problem is irrelevant to someone who doesn't even have the money to buy a fun car.
I was able to
of economic.
Okay, you just mentioned K cars. You can buy a really nice Honda Beat for $6,000.
Yeah, and in the old days, you used to buy an M3 for $6,000.
No.
Yes.
No, E36 maybe.
Yeah, okay. Which is my favorite one.
My point is there exist benefits, right? So it's not just all one-sided,
yes,
right?
Of course.
Right. So I thought that was
the benefits
interesting.
are irrelevant to you if you can't even enter the market.
I don't think the finances have changed as much as I don't think I agree that the financial situation has changed as much as you do, right? It is harder to get a job. People are leaving school with more debt, but I think inflation-adjusted used car prices are not as far off as we think they were. One of the people confronted
inflation
me
is
with
completely irrelevant if your wages don't grow at a rate that matches inflation,
yes,
and so your buying power
right.
goes down. Even if inflation incorporates things like education and healthcare and real estate, which the properly defined basket of goods
right.
that goes into the CPI, the Consumer Price Index.
I was just going to say, and the CPI, I don't really think that the CPI has fully kept pace with the reality of life, even with that, non-wage 100%. Adjusted, right? I'm just throwing out examples. I'm not taking a side. Stop being like one of the fucking people who are like yelling at me that like you love Cybertruck.
Well, what I'm saying is that whoever's making these arguments, regardless of whether it's you or someone who's DMing you, you have to understand that if you can't even buy a car, the benefits of living in the modern era are immaterial to you.
I think the point is that we have scales where there are things that are good and things that are bad, and we should look at all of those different things. We can weight them differently, and we can say, okay, well, that winds up becoming not relevant if you don't have money to buy a car, for sure, but it is a factor, and it's something that I hadn't thought of, right?
The flip side of that marketplace also, which was something that people addressed. Or do you have a thought on this, or do you want me
it goes both ways, right?
Well, gone are the days where you can sort of like find a car in the newspaper.
Screw someone. The best thing was you used to be able to buy cars from old ladies who had no idea what they were worth because you had to buy the blue book, and you could only buy the blue book if you were a dealer, so no one knew what their cars were worth, and this is how I put myself through college.
Yeah, for example, or if there's a place where there is higher cost of living versus lower cost of living, and the resale value of the car is lower in a place where the cost of living is lower because people have less money, and so now there's this incentive which is sort of equalizing the market nationally, where someone who says, I live in this shitty area where nobody makes any money, and so I can buy this car cheaper here, which is appropriate because I make less money. Now there's this sort of national marketplace where someone's like, these are cheaper here, I'm going to go buy this here and transport it to somewhere more expensive and sell it, and it's the people who are not sort of trying to struggle to enter the market who are doing that because they're the ones who have the resources to do it. So that's the benefits of a more sort of perfect information marketplace.
Well, but the next benefit that they're sort of self-limiting, right? As what you're going to say. But
it's a negative for the people who aren't in a position of privilege where they have the capital to move cars around the country.
But for those people who are not in privilege to have a mechanic work on their car, right, who can't pay anyone, the vast information resource that we have. These are not my arguments. Don't give me that look. You can now, thanks to forums and the internet and YouTube University.
Hey guys, Chris Fix here.
You can own a car that you previously had no chance of.
Yes.
That's another thing I hadn't thought of.
You can maintain it.
You could maintain it. I mean, the perfect example of that is in Scirocco when I got it. I mean, I paid $1,500 for it. It didn't want to start in the morning. Long story short, it racked up $1,200 worth of diagnostics from a local VW shop that was down the street from me. I think I've told this story to you, certainly to you, but after $1,200 worth of diag, they came back to me with, okay, so your car has a memory code stored. I'll never forget this, for intermittent bad ground on pin 9 on the engine computer, and we're trying to find out where that came from. And so I went on this new internet thing. This was in 1997.
Oh, that's that little mark with the A and then the ring around it.
And my email blew up with all these people who were like, this was listserv before forums, blew up with the people saying your Scirocco doesn't have any diagnostic capability whatsoever. Pin 9 is not used on the 16 valve because it was for Don't quote me on the PIN number. It was for cruise control, which none of them had. This is bullshit. You're getting brought to the cleaners. Just go home and this is the fix for it. This is all new. So this sort of hive mind fixed that car. By the way, I showed up and said, hey, can I borrow my car for a day? I got to go take finals. And then I never went back to the shop. So I probably still owe them $1,200. But nice try trying to screw me. I had the internet, and that's the point, right? So the internet has made the ownership of older cars, getting parts, finding help on like complicated repair procedures and DIY stuff so much easier than it was.
As long as you have a car that's mainstream enough, because I've definitely owned cars where I'm just like, fuck.
Yeah,
like the Citroen.
Okay, but you're a fucking wackadoodle out there.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
But the truth is, you can find tech procedures for almost everything. It's unbelievable how many people
for a lot of cars. Yeah. That's true. For like Lancias and Citroens, it's a
you're talking about starting enthusiasts. Nobody wants.
I know.
I'm going to get blasted now. If one person wants a Lancia, I'm kidding.
So yes, let me just see if there's anything else in here that I wanted to relay. But I was surprised by the consistency of the content of what I heard.
Well, it's your echo chamber. I'm not surprised.
I felt like it was consistent with the comments in YouTube. Also, actually, that was the true litmus test for me.
The YouTube stuff, the YouTube comments, we're saying that I'm out of touch because I don't realize how expensive life has gotten. To which I can say, really, I'll show you my bank account. I'm very much in touch with how expensive the world is. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't be driving $1,500 shit boxes.
Hey, up. Keep the Ferrari out.
However,
how many of them?
I'm old. It's taken me a long time to amass this stuff. I mean, literally, I've had the Scirocco 20. What the fuck? What year is this? It's going to be 27 years this year. I mean, this is a long time to have these cars. But the point here is, though, unless you have other to make the transition. The point is there's something else. There's another phenomenon happening in the market right now. And the two of these things are very much related. And it's the markup phenomenon on new cars.
Yes, which is a symptom probably of this situation, right? I mentioned the 3 ways in which people were getting fucked last time. And one of those things is the lack of options now of sort of modern enthusiast cars at most price points.
Right. I think the thing we did a bad job at in the last episode is going through there. I could list 30 turn of the century to 2010 cars that are cool as shit to own.
And that era to me is not problematic. I mean, because that's the era where you get like Ford GT and 997 GT3s.
Okay, I am talking about, back to earth. We're talking about cars for young enthusiasts.
Yeah, but the point is that at the top of the market, if a car like that exists, then that type of philosophy that underpins the state of the art.
You think so?
Sure.
I don't know if those are.
I mean, if everything
correlated.
converts to sort of hybridization and turbocharging, sort of in approximately the same era, there's a character that transcends the entire stack of enthusiast cars. You know, the 1990s Halo cars kind of have a similar sort of underlying philosophy and underlying technology that you would say that an Integra Type R, right? There's a similarity between Integra Type R and, I don't know, Porsche Carrera GT, even those are 10 years apart from each other. But, choose car from the 90s, Ferrari F50, right? There's this sort of like screaming manual transmission character that exists through the entire enthusiast stack at any particular moment. So my hypothesis is that if you go to 2005 or whatever it is, and you say you've got cars like Ford GT and Ferrari 360 and 430, when Ferrari goes turbocharging, you're like, oh fuck, now it's really over because even Ferrari's gone turbocharging. But the point is that at a particular moment in time, the entire stack from whatever part of the market you're in will have a sort of character. I mean, that's why we talk about 80s cars. Everyone knows what it means, and it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a CRX or a Countach. People all have a sort of like a notion of what it means when you say an 80s car. But anyway, give us some examples of less elevated cars from that era that are enthusiast cars. I mean,
Pontiac Solstice.
Yeah, RSX. That's a kind of an esoteric one.
RSX?
No, yours is the Solstice is kind of esoteric.
Yeah, but my point is, the example that a friend of mine gave to me is a QP5. Right, you can buy the world's nicest Quattroporte for $25,000. Okay, we're not talking about the nicest one, but you can go and have a $12,000 or $10,000 Quattroporte.
Yes,
there are the list of enthusiastic cars. I mean, think TSX, ILX.
I don't have no argument or disagreement
at
all with anything up to sort of, I don't know, we'll call it 2012 or whatever.
Right. And I think we did. That's my point. I think we did a really bad job. Come on, that is not attainable.
Well, I was
At
just
least Jake laughed.
I'm just saying that that up to 2012, there's like a moment. But where
LFA was the beginning. That was past the tip of the iceberg because it was ruined by its own transmission.
Yes, that's true. And that's
ruined is a strong word, but
it is by far the worst part of the car.
Hey, MR2 Spider can have a ruined. You can get an MR2 Spider with a F1 automated manual.
Yeah, an
too.
SMG.
No. So I think we did a really bad job at saying there are tons of really cool cars from that era. But I think what we're saying is today, without question, I think we agree on this.
Well, the time marker, we use this the last decade or so, and that's why F30 was a good example because that came out in 2012.
Right. That's the sort of beginning of there is nothing anymore left, right? Now, today, I think we are in a situation where there's so few cars that are interesting to buy. And this
for enthusiasts.
And this sounds like the old man in my day. However, I think this is what we're all going to agree on, right? The 20-year-olds who are saying thank you to you and the 40-year-olds who are saying whatever. Derek's out of touch talking about air-cooled 911s, right? We're all going to agree on one thing. There's nothing out there right now. And the few things that are out there right now are being absolutely ruined by the fucking dealer network.
Yeah, so this is, you want to talk about Integra Type S and Civic Type R.
The best example I can give is he listens to the podcast, so he's going to hear it. But a friend of an acquaintance of ours went to go buy a Civic Type R. He had a Mark 7 GTI. He got rear-ended through no fault of his own. Somebody in a Tesla, hey, let's make this politically charged. Some dumb fuck in a Tesla, because they have to be a dumb fuck to be a Tesla. But anyway, somebody rear-ended him and then took off. And there he is with a rear-ended GTI. And he gets totaled, check from the insurance company and says, you know what? I don't want a Mark 8. There's kind of nothing else. I'm just going to go buy a Civic Type R. So with the funds in hand, walks into a Honda dealership and, long story short, is ready to buy the car, but they will not let him test drive it. Period.
At their ADM.
I didn't even ask whatever the price is, he's willing to pay it. They will not let him test drive it. And I cannot tell you how many people I've heard this from. I would buy a Civic Type R right now, but I'm not buying a car without test driving it. Maybe I don't like it. And it's too big of an investment to buy. That's number one. The second one is the bullshit dealer practices. A friend of mine in Texas tried to buy an Integra Type S from a dealership that has plastered all over their communications that they will never, in all caps, charge an ADM. And they tried to charge him an ADM. He writes a letter. The sales manager, who, there's like an automated email that goes out first and is like, I'm so looking forward to exceeding your expectations. Automated bullshit. And when he writes back, is like, hey, I'm looking forward to working with you too. You guys say you don't do this, but you're trying to get an ADM out of this car. Where do we go from here? The guy's like, look, sorry, if you don't want to pay an ADM, we're not talking. And of course, then my buddy writes this diatribe back. Look at the tone difference between your automated email saying all about customer exceeding my expectations and then the reality of this. And the guy's reason for saying that, well, we can say we don't charge ADMs is because no one's ever called us on that. And, also we've occasionally charged NSX, like an ADM on NSXs. And so he said, fuck you. I'm not buying, I will not work with a dealer that says no ADMs and does it.
The problem, however, is that there's enough people out there who want these cars, and there's few enough of these cars that someone just walks in and does it. And then you're just like, I took a stand and now I have no car.
Now he's got no car. Same thing. He tried to buy a Raptor R. And this one's really frustrating because I think he'll really like this truck. Wants to buy a Raptor R as his next daily driver. Mm-hmm. No one will sell it to him for without a markup. He doesn't want to pay a markup, which we can argue that back and forth.
It's a market failure, someone might say.
Listen, if
but the way that's executed, I think, was particularly problematic.
Right. So this dealer published the truck at MSRP, said it was in stock, and he went through an online process where he applied for credit, got the truck, uploaded his proof of insurance, uploaded his driver's license, and effectively completed
gave his social security number to them.
He completed the transaction and then got an email from the dealer principal saying, hey, we're looking forward to helping you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so, of course, he's like, excuse me, what?
I thought I bought it.
I thought I bought the car. Like, oh, no, that's not available. Also, there's a markup. And he was like, well, hold on, wait. It's right here. It's listed as available. It's listed with the MSRP. You can see all of the details on the truck and
there's
nowhere.
A VIN, right? It's attached to a specific vehicle.
And it had been there for 50 days. And he's like, it's still here. It's still marked as available. What's going on? No response. And so there are two problems. Number one, dealers are assholes. We know this.
And the reason why they can be assholes is the same fundamental issue, which is that there's not a lot of options. There's not a lot of stock for that few number of cars that enthusiasts were just like, fuck it, I want the car. You know, it's not a substitutable product. When my mom always would tell me, you have to be able to be willing to walk away when you buy a car. Mm-hmm. And I did this once when I was like a teenager, and I was willing to pay more for the car, and I walked away because she was like, "You have to take a stand and prove to them that they're not going to get the best of you." And I was like, and then I didn't get the car, and I was like,
right.
What the hell? So you have to think about what your alternative to the negotiated agreement. They call it in the literature calls this BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement. You know, if you are truly willing to walk away, then you do it. But if you're not, which in these cases where
you're going to have to accept their terms.
You can't get another car, then you have to accept their terms, and they know this, and that's why they continually fuck people.
Simple economics. It's supply and demand. If somebody's willing to pay $50,000 over markup for a car and you're not, they're going to get the car and you're not. But it's the same market force that's driving the prices of used cars up and up and up and up. And all these are the cars that we love from the 80s, 90s, 2000. All of it is exactly the same market force that's driving up the new car MSRP ADM.
What few enthusiast new cars exist.
Exactly. There's a scarcity issue, right? There's not much available on the market right now that's interesting to enthusiasts.
So how do you reconcile that with the line where OEMs will say there's not enough market to develop this enthusiast car?
They're complete. Okay. The first part of that I say to them is, if your new car was all that good, I'm sorry to say, your old stuff wouldn't be worth what it's worth, right? This is the 911 conundrum, right? All of the 911 stuff is worthless. No one cares except the GT cars, right? The 911 ST, the GT3, GT2, GT4, all of those GT cars are worth a ton of money because people are willing. There are enough people who are willing to pay for that experience that the price has gone through the roof.
Or we can talk about bandwagoning now, because this was another sort of hot button topic, which is that if this, it's chicken or egg, basically, which is that if there's this market out there that supports the car selling over market and you somehow manage to get one for ADM or without an ADM at MSRP instead,
now you have profit.
Then you make profit and then you sell it, and that's why they sell it. And people are basically like, I can print money if I keep buying these cars. And so like, this is what happened kind of in 1989. In 1989, there was this huge collector car market run up and then a catastrophic collapse afterwards. And I know real people who no longer live in chateaus because of this. I mean, the market did genuinely collapse. Like the market went overnight from...
I don't care about that. You know people who live in chateaus?
Who don't live in chateaus anymore because of this.
I mean, I've been kicked out of chateaus.
Anyway, there were dealers who were basically buying cars and they were selling them at ever increasing prices and they were borrowing against them and they were putting all their eggs into the same basket. New Testarossas were $300,000 when the MSRP was $100,000 back then, and the market sort of very spectacularly collapsed in 1990.
Can I be mean and say something?
Something about justice.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Fuck you.
Well, what happens, and I fundamentally, I do agree with you, because what's happening is that people are being drawn in who are speculators.
Right.
And the cars are getting consumed by people who are not the sort of diehard enthusiasts who are just like, I like these weird old cars, even when they're $11,000, $111,000, doesn't matter to me. They're cheap and shitty or expensive and shitty, but I like them. And those are the people who will be there after the market collapses. Those are the people who were there before the market got run up like that. And so, with Porsche GT cars, especially, my concern is that the people who are buying the cars are
the wrong
doing
people.
so because it's and you don't get a car unless you've bought several in the past. So it's artificially
so that's the whole dealer bullshit, right?
Yes.
I don't know if I don't think I knew this until I started working with you at ECME. We're seeing how so many of the people who live in the big car world had to buy one car to get another, to get another, to get another, to get another.
Yes.
And there were people who would literally spend $750,000 on cars that would sit on battery tenders and never get touched, solely so they can get an allocation for what they really wanted, which, by the way, they were only really buying because there was money built into that, right? This was with McLaren, this was with Ferrari, and I see those houses of cards falling quite a bit, and everyone has turned their attention to Porsche. I think there's a reason why in that GT cars are the only place you can get that experience anymore. I mean, you're talking GMA.
In terms of the automotive experience, yes.
Right. In terms of the experience of driving, there's nothing that comes close
as opposed to
GT.
the experience of getting fucked.
Yes, you can get fucked anywhere you want. But no, I mean, that the reason why that 911 ST felt worth it at $300,000 to me is because you can't better that experience for any amount of money in the new car market. But I said at the same time, I hate that it's so expensive. The problem is there are so few choices. Where else are those people going to go? If you want the experience of a Raptor R, where else are you going to go? If you want a GTI or you want a hot hatch at this point, your choice is that Mark 8, which, okay, there's that, or there's a Civic Type R.
It's fine if all you ever want to do is drive and not anything else in the car, such as change the radio volume or the HVAC.
Look, it's not that, but you can get used to anything, but whatever.
Yes,
the Mark 8's still a good car. It's just not as good as it was. But the hot hatch segment is now down to GTI, Civic Type R, and the Civic and Acura,
which is large,
right? Which is they're not hot hatches anymore. They're Rover. I wonder if they're as big as a Rover SD1. They're fucking enormous.
Yeah.
So really, you have
Veloster. Don't forget Veloster.
Out of production.
Yeah. Okay. And we never got the i30.
Right. The Veloster was magical in terms of how it drove, but I certainly had a lot of friends who were like, "You can tell me how wonderful it is all you want. I'm not driving that ugly piece of shit." Right, because people still see Hyundai as a less than brand, and
it was also
not a beautiful
polarizing
car.
aesthetically.
Right. But I do really sympathize with anyone looking for a new car right now. I've talked about this with people who have approached me and said, "I want a new car. What can I have?" And I want, somebody
Corolla
calls you and says,
GR.
right. But that's,
the other GR, the 86.
86, right. Your choices are, the joke is, I want something that's a manual and something that is reasonably practical that I can use as my daily driver, and preferably something with an interesting engine. What are my choices? And I think we're at an all-time low in that. And that's maybe the malaise days were just as bad. Although, maybe there were funner cars that were slow.
In retrospect, of course, it's less dark. At the time, I'm sure it seemed dark, but that was motivated by a delta between regulations and technology. And so you're like, this is a problem that we can solve with just the brute force of engineering. That's the problem that exists now. It's not the result of that. That the result of that is sort of these economic factors and OEMs.
It kind of is. No, so the malaise era, if any one of you guys gets a chance to read any car reviews from the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
Speaking of reading car reviews, we discussed a new idea which we failed to deliver on, John Phillips quotes.
Oh, that's a good one. We have to do that.
Let's try and remember at the end. We're going to forget.
Remember, Jake, you got to remind us. We're going to make an episode out of the best of John Phillips quotes. John Phillips was a writer for Car and Driver for many years, had a column. He was the funniest guy in the business. What the hell were we talking about?
We were talking about the regulatory environment that caused malaise era problems and how that compares to
the
today.
late 70s, early 80s was a terrible time for performance for cars, because the only way to make the cars cleaner, which they needed to do, was to make them slower and slower and slower and slower. We're having the opposite effect with that right now, which is interesting, is that the only way to make these cars cleaner is to make them electric, which is making them faster. But people are very upset about this because people like their internal combustion cars and they don't want to go to electricity. But what is also happening is that the internal combustion engines are being strangled to the point where you can't make really fun cars anymore. It's very difficult to make a high volume, naturally aspirated manual car to pass, especially European regs. So the problem with being American is we love to think we rule the world, but we don't. There are very few parts of the market that are solely US based, and that's like full-size pickup trucks, for example, or full-size. No one cares about those outside the US. But the rest of the cars, whether they're Asian or European, have to sell around the world. And especially European regs, are so difficult to pass that they're just not commercially viable anymore. And so the idea of a naturally aspirated manual something is going to have to be so low volume that they can get exemptions on it, or they can somehow otherwise pass it past their board.
So GT3 does this kind of.
Yeah. It's strangled. GT3 would be a very different beast if it weren't for the European stuff. or
this
the
is why they
California
did the-
drive-by noise
yeah.
regs, right? But I think this is an unprecedented time in that we are at peak automobile in a lot of ways. But in terms of the enjoyment of driving, we are so far past peak, and it's just not even close anymore. If there were probably discussions that cars in the early '80s were in some ways better than they had been. With the onslaught of the Japanese market, like cars coming into the US for the first time ever, Honda came online, Toyota really came online. People started recognizing those were better cars. But I don't think we've ever had a situation
better in the objective sense, not
right.
in the experiential
Exactly.
sense. Because I think that everyone was, Enthusiast magazines were all mourning the passage of the
Fair, that's true.
Enthusiast car.
Yeah.
during that era.
Until the sort of 83, 84, 85. When
Yeah,
shit went
EFI
crazy.
multivalve,
Right.
and catalysts.
But we've been in a really great time to be a car enthusiast for a long time. And it's just not now because the industry is heading in the wrong direction.
Right, and our assumption was that things always get better, and
They do. I mean, look, they do for transportation.
yes,
but they're not
if
for
we,
us.
The we in that sentence is enthusiasts as opposed to
And I said,
population.
that in that episode that the sort of de facto enthusiast sedan has become the Tesla Model 3. And I said, at least on this coast. I don't know if that's the case in the rest of the country, but
It depends on what sort of performance you want, and you did say performance, not like enthusiast. Give me fizzy feelings.
what else is there?
Yeah, I don't know. Beats me.
I mean, there is no 2 Series sedan. The 3 Series is a 7 Series
Yeah,
by size.
Same thing with the CT4.
And manual
CT4.
anyway. CT4. CT4 is one of the few shining stars. And then, to your point, no one buys it.
Yeah,
No one buys the Miata. You said earlier, you pointed out that it was all over the news that
Supra
sales were down 48% or whatever.
Yeah,
It's 5 years old.
yeah,
Like, how long do we think this was going to go on for?
yeah. But at least there's some corner of the market where there's no ADMs. I don't know. I'm looking for a silver
true.
lining here.
That's true. I still don't want one. I'm sure you don't either.
I would like a CT4.
I could daily a CT4.
I would be pretty
Even
keen
with an
on a
automatic. It actually works pretty well. I mean, hold on. Let me say that. I wouldn't have an automatic, but it works really well even with an automatic.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, but there's kind of nothing. So
Yes.
I think those driving for the same forces that are pushing ADMs are pushing up the prices of older cars. I think we can all agree on that. The choices are being whittled down and whittled down and whittled down. Now, at the same time, there's the new market of electric stuff coming online.
The other thing that's happening is that there's this sort of general economic climate of high interest rates right now, which is removing some people from the market. And I think it bears mentioning that if you somehow are in a position to buy right now, then it's not a bad time to be buying, because all of this sort of superheated nonsense that was happening during peak pandemic is largely past. And so,
Unless you're trying to get a Civic Type R.
yes,
Or-
I meant in the sort of secondhand enthusiast car space. And so if you were like, man, this is insane and unsustainable in the pandemic, you were right. And now is a great time to buy. So start looking under rocks, I guess. But it's heartening. There's more balance between buyers and sellers.
Or look at
the
the stuff from 2000. I mean, from anything from 2000.
Yeah, but all that stuff already went up.
But some of it's still really reasonable. But I just saw a $50,000 Pontiac G8 sell the other day.
Holy hell.
Yeah. Like, oh crap! There goes my whole argument, right?
Unrepeatability is really a thing in today's market. But,
Right.
that
was a dead end.
I drove a E34 M5 over the weekend, and I was like, man, these things are really cheap for what they are. There's definitely
Mm-hmm.
like opportunities. I guess at some point we should probably put a list together of things that we think are undervalued or that deliver a great experience for the number of dollars they cost. I think E34 M5 to buy, maybe not to maintain with the S38, and E36 M3s. I often talk about this and that car in this same context.
QP5s. I mean, we could have.
But a lot of these are to buy, but not to maintain.
Yeah, but there's good stuff.
Yeah,
There's really good
there
stuff.
is, especially with the market being more balanced.
I mean, an 18 with C63s, W204s.
Yeah, C63. I think that Caymans also, the first generation Cayman S,
Cadillac,
like an
ATS,
06, 07.
like an ATS V. That's a hell of a experience for a sedan. There are plenty of things. Jag XF spool brake. There are probably
If you can
6
find
of
one
them.
of the, I was going to say 3, but maybe it is
being
6.
generous.
If you can find one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a topic that's probably worth exploring, because because I do see opportunity out there. It's not all doom and gloom, especially in the last year.
That's exactly the point I made.
Assuming you have the money in the first place to enter the space, and that's the big hurdle that I wanted to draw attention to.
Right, and that's where we need to stop and say we can't talk about. We're not economists, and even those people who say they're economists, much like weather people, don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Can we just agree on that?
Sure, I hate everybody.
Yeah, perfect. And to quote Billy Joel, good old days weren't always good. Tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. Chin up.
Should we have another quote? I was thinking we should just do one in every episode from John Phillips.
Oh, all right.
Is that okay? We've done this before. But
is this going to be a teaser? Because next week is not going to be John Phillips. Well, we have another episode planned for next week.
That's right. That's true. But what I think he says such absurd things that there's probably enough, and a small percentage of it is online. And so my intent is that what we should do is just take all of the car and drivers from the period that he was writing and go through them and just be like, have you seen this insane bullshit? Because there's there's probably half a dozen of his articles that are online, and then the rest of them are just deep in the pages of magazines and hard copy that are on eBay if you're lucky.
We'll spend a day in my office going through old CDs.
Yes. Okay. Which one do we want?
Oh, you already started compiling them?
Well, I sent you one. I took a screenshot and sent you one. Actually, let's just do the one from the Cadillac EXT, the Escalade EXT, which is the Chevy Avalanche, but as a Cadillac. I might have even, I've said this before because I think it's so funny. I drove this Cadillac to our 10 best loop to attest its handling. Later on, I came back. There you go. Okay. And on that bombshell,
we will see you next week.
We will see you next week for additional Carmudgeoning.
Everyone stop fighting about the Cybertruck. Stop fighting about whether cars suck and people suck and the economy sucks.
It's unambiguous. Everything sucks.
Can we just can we agree on something? Everyone and everything sucks.
Great. Carmudgeons we are.
But tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems.